And now I will hand it over to Vanessa, my president and COO, to talk about libraries and digital literacy.
Thank you, Dave. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Vanessa, and I'm honored to be here today with you all. I think as we discuss sort of the digital divide and digital literacy, it's super important that we understand the definition of what digital literacy is. So UNESCO has a great definition of digital literacy, and basically it's the ability to access, manage, understand, integrate, communicate, and evaluate and create information safely and utilize that information regardless of where you are. Dave, if you want to go to the next slide, that shows the text-heavy definition of digital literacy that was provided by UNESCO. There's multiple ways to define digital literacy, and I've highlighted here the key features. So access, manage, understand information, integrate information, communicate information, evaluate information, and create information safely. So if we look at digital literacy today versus 10 years ago, if you want to go to the next slide, please, Dave. I think there's a clear definition and distinction between even just in the last 10 years, where right now a digital divide is created by the data, the division in data and access to data. The ability to understand information that is fake and information and news that is fake and real. The ability to be able to search online safely, find accurate, authenticated information, and then apply that to any decision that's being made in your life, regardless of whether you're a student in elementary school, high school, a learner, regardless of whether you're a digital citizen, just ensuring that you're able to integrate effectively into society. Keeping in mind that in 2020, the digital natives are now the teachers, and as such are applying innovative and new ways of learning and integrating information. The demand for high order thinking is super important because it's not just about learning how to use the various and multiple technologies around the world, but it's why and when to use them that is equally, if not more important. And of course, the proliferation of places to learn. And in 2020, that has changed significantly with regards to COVID. So whereas bricks and mortar buildings are very, very important and will never go away, it's important to understand that we all have an opportunity and a responsibility to ensure that regardless of where the learner is, we need to make sure that the information is available to them where they are. So next slide, please, Dave. There is a digital inequality today. So we know the rate of technology is exponential. The change is happening constantly. And we're also faced with new types of crimes, cybersecurity crimes, threats to security, threats to data. In many countries, we have an aging population. And what that means is people are retiring later. And perhaps those people weren't brought up with the digital skills necessary to be successful. Youth unemployment is growing, and more so in today's age. We have a big problem with unemployment globally. And employers need to ensure that the people within the organizations have multiple and diverse skill sets in order to be productive in the environment that they're faced with. Next slide, please, Dave. So we identified quickly in the years with CCI Learning sort of three key areas with regards to sectors, if you will, that need to have 21st century skills. So in order to equip people with the necessary skills. So schools, of course, we know all of the students have to have the necessary skills to be able to learn online, to be able to use technology, to be able to integrate technology. We know that corporations and workforce development have those needs as well in order to be more productive. And from a corporate perspective, really, if you have somebody that is proficient in technologies, they're going to reduce training time, and they're going to increase productivity and profits. And we know corporations like that. Seniors is an area that sometimes gets forgotten, and I think it's really important to understand with an aging population that all of us have access to the technologies for various reasons. So seniors, it might be important for them to stay connected to close family and friends. It may be important for them to be able to reach out into our wide world web and find the information necessary. And the statistics are overwhelming. We have 90% of the workforce say that basic computer skills are a requirement. 72% of seniors say they need assistance learning and learning how to use modern technologies. And 94% of employers say, 94% of employees stay longer if their company invests in learning. Next slide, please, Dave. So that's great. But I believe, and I think we all believe here, including, and I'm so excited that Catherine's decided to join us, including Microsoft, believe that the library is a place that needs to be accessed. The library sector and the connection that the library sector has to their patrons and the community and their citizens is a very, very important service that can be offered. So got a couple of sort of engagement questions here, hoping you guys will play along with me. How many public libraries are there globally? So let's get you typing your answer in the chat. Let's see if we can just take a stab at it without using the internet to find the answer. So how many public libraries do we believe that there are globally? Let's see if we can get a quick stab answer at that in the chat. And I'll give you guys maybe 30 seconds or so to get that answer in and drum up some excitement around this. And I'll explain why in a second. Okay, so we've got some people answering here. That's fantastic. So there are over 230,000 public libraries globally. Think about that for a minute. 230,000 public libraries. And in the US, over 90% of the population live within a public library service area. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the library is a resource that the community can tap into to learn. Next slide, please. Okay, next one. So we had 4 people answer that one, and according to my chat window, if my connection is good, let's see if we can go for more now. So next fun fact: which city has the most libraries per capita? Which city in the world has the most libraries per capita? Let's take a guess. Awesome, great answers coming in there. Okay, drum roll, please, Dave. Edinburgh, Scotland. So Edinburgh is a city of about 500,000 people, and it has over 300 libraries. That's 60 libraries per 100,000 people. So that means it has an abundance of resources available for that city. I found that quite interesting. I see some of the other answers in the chat. I see Washington, D.C., I see New York, I see London. Excellent, excellent guesses. But Edinburgh, Scotland, which is a relatively small country, of course, with only sort of 5 or 6 million people, and yet in a city of 500,000 people has over 300 libraries. I found that quite fascinating. Next slide, please, Dave. So we know libraries come in all shapes and sizes. Whether it's the Doctor Who style box in the middle, whether it's the quaint rural library serving a very, very small population, or whether it's the zebra-striped building, powerful and architecturally strong. They come in all shapes and sizes. However, in my opinion, next slide, please, Dave. Libraries are not just buildings. The libraries serve a vital community service. They're responsible for connecting patrons in person and online to resources that aid to improve lives. They can increase employment opportunities with value-added programs, whether it be basic literacy or whether it be digital literacy. And one of the things I find most ironic is every time I visited a library, and very often when I was young, you would hear, shh, shh. And yet the libraries have such a powerful community voice. Ensuring that community members are competitive with the latest in technology skills and providing vital sustainability and the ability to improve local economic development. I see libraries as a way to bridge the local communities with whether it be technology, whether it be digital literacy learning, whether it be working with local homeless shelters. Every patron within the community, everybody should have access to all of the resources. And libraries are starting to reinvent themselves. We know they're underfunded. We're all hoping to get more funding, but there's a way to make sustainable programs by partnering and creating agreements with local school districts, by partnering and recognizing the need to have employment programs in their local communities. And I think it's an area of our ecosystem that needs to have more attention. And I believe Microsoft believes that too, given that they have appointed Catherine Devine as a whole area in libraries and museums for Microsoft. I hope you'll join us as we start to partner with libraries and start to connect libraries with local school districts, partnering with employment services and employment agencies, and help us empower libraries and librarians to be the vital community service that we believe, and I know they believe that they are. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Dave. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vanessa. That was really great. A lot of really, really great information and stats in that presentation that really are shifting everyone's focus towards that and bringing the best out of these partnerships. And now I would like to hand it over to Catherine Devine to talk about libraries, digital transformation, and the digital literacy. Catherine, welcome and good luck.
Thanks so much, Dave, and thank you so much, Vanessa, for inviting me. I'm really thrilled to be here with everyone today. I see lots and lots of people on the chat from South Africa, so that's great. I'm sure there are people from all over the place, but that's really interesting to me. I really have a fascinating role. Before COVID, my life was visiting museums and libraries around the world, and I have to say that's certainly one of the better jobs of my career. But Microsoft is, started a focus 2 years ago on museums and libraries, and my role is to sort of be at Microsoft and think about what are the needs of museums and libraries globally. What are the trends? How can we best support them? What are they trying to achieve? How do we help them achieve their missions? What is the best way to do that? And with that, we're going to talk today about literacy and digital literacy, but just generally skills literacy. And some of the work that we're doing in this field. We're delighted to be working with CCI Learning. They're an important global training partner for us here at Microsoft. And so I just want to sort of give you a sort of insights into sort of how we think about libraries and museums, how we're committed to them, how we think about the digital divide, how we think about digital literacy. and the role that libraries have to play. Before we move on to the next slide, I just want to talk a little bit about my own experience with libraries during COVID. When I came into this role with a background in museums, and so libraries are not necessarily new to me, but they're definitely not as much depth as I had with museums. And the librarian community really welcomed me into this role, and I must say they are some of the loveliest people in the world. And I'm not buttering people up here, but they really are some of the loveliest. And I think we saw that through COVID. I was amazed where other organizations and other industries very much went into lockdown, like we all went into lockdown, but went into this, we need to close, right? Libraries did that, but they also really embraced, I heard some amazing heroic stories of librarians who actually rang everybody in their community and then literally drove books and resources out to people who were at risk in the community, or people who just to continue providing that service in any kind of way that they can. And I think this really speaks to the importance that libraries have with the larger community, and really always demonstrated, but demonstrated through COVID. So we can move to the next slide, Dave. So I'm not going to, this is a bit of an eye chart, I'm not going to go into this, but I just want to sort of highlight to you how we think very holistically at Microsoft about the opportunities for digital transformation, which is digital transformation to me is how can we reach new audiences? How can we find new ways to engage? How can we do anything that we need to do to further our mission through the use of technology? So it's not coming from a how do we use technology, but much more from a how do we help libraries achieve what they want to achieve, and how can technology help them achieve it better, more ways, all these kinds of things. So I want to highlight to you here in the green in the top is enhanced visitor experience. And we have a triangle here around education and community. And I very much see the work around skilling and literacy as falling into this area for libraries. But the point of this objective is to help you understand the breadth of work that we're doing in the library space. So everything from the advanced discovery area, which is, how can we help discoverability of collections? How can we help people find what they need to do, whether you're a librarian, whether you're a community member, all the way through down to, in the bottom orange, in the bottom left orange, it's just efficiencies in running the organization. And then in environments on the bottom is, everything from like smart buildings, how can we maintain environment sustainability? So the objective of here, we're going to talk about education and community, but I want to help people understand the breadth that Microsoft looks at this space globally and wants to sort of really sort of add value back into this community in terms of recognizing its mission. So if we could move to the next slide, Dave. So one of the things that we really are very concerned about at Microsoft, it may surprise you that Microsoft is concerned about this, but we are, because our mission is, we see ourselves very much as a mission-driven organization as well, certainly not in the same way that museums and libraries are, but our mission is how can we help everybody on the planet achieve more? And that's not to suggest that they don't achieve enough already, but sometimes there are constraints that limit people in achieving everything that they can. So this digital divide, we all know that this is really important. I realize I'm sort of preaching to the choir here. It used to be that technology or access or an understanding of technology was a nice to have. And I am someone who grew up, actually went to school in the 1970s and 60s. And when I left school, actually when I left university, we still didn't have computers. I grew up in Australia and we still didn't have access to personal computing. And I sort of feel like I got into computers literally in the mid 80s in Australia, which is when personal computers, and that was a major transformational sort of like moment. But if you went to school before that, you didn't have any of this experience. And it was very much, it was out of reach. I mean, computers were tens of thousands of dollars, personal computers. Actually, my career started in mainframes, which was totally out of reach for anybody. And then in the 90s, the internet came along. And again, that was out of reach because there was a very big technical hurdle to actually access the internet. Like you didn't need to code, but you certainly needed to understand network communication protocols and things like this. But and so for a long time, we have treated technology as being a nice to have. It's for the people who are like Catherine and others in the world who really love technology and love playing with new things. But those days are well and truly gone. And now we have this very unfortunate scenario where these are critical, that accessing services in life, navigating your life requires you to both understand and have access. And this is not true for everybody, including in developed countries. And it is really quite amazing how much in developed countries these things are not available to everybody, but it's affecting the overall education and the ability to just navigate your life. And so we see libraries globally in the business of like making Wi-Fi hotspots available, making laptops available. We saw a lot of that during COVID, people literally like doing curbside service and getting everything out of their libraries to be available to the community. We see rural broadband. Actually, just broadband access globally is a real issue because the world, particularly the content coming out of the United States, assumes a certain level of internet throughput that doesn't exist everywhere. And I know personally from my own experience in Australia, when I go to Australia, I cannot assume that I have the same level of throughput that I have in the United States, for example. And so we are inadvertently limiting people through this. And Microsoft has done a lot here in the rural broadband space. And then let's get on to this idea of digital skills. So how can libraries, how can libraries help the community in just understanding? Because we've found that, you know, even basically applying for, if you're someone who's like my age, who went through school through that system or older, you may find yourself at a stage in your career where you can no longer, you know, maybe you're trained in a trade and you're a forklift driver. Those roles have been automated, and now you need to find a role. But even to get, you know, a minimum wage job at something like working for McDonald's, you need digital skills to be able to apply for those roles. So libraries have been key. And as Vanessa said, you know, there are 230,000 of them in the world. Apparently I was wrong. I said 100,000. There are 230,000 of them in the world. They're important parts of that community. And then, of course, with COVID, we've seen this movement towards digital program delivery. I'm really excited about this because inadvertently, by focusing on brick and mortar, we have unintentionally limited access. And there are lots of reasons why people don't have access. They may not have access to transportation. They may be disabled. There may be lots of things, but digital program delivery is a way to reach the community. And so I think during COVID, we saw a lot of embracing of this. We saw major libraries doing things like, you know, basic computer literacy delivered over the internet. In a way that, you know, I know personally, I actually attended an event last night that was driven by the State Library of New South Wales. I'm currently based in Seattle in the US. New South Wales is in Australia. Actually can't get there at the moment. But the point is I could actually attend an event, and it was super interesting. I think we've underestimated how much digital program delivery limits. By having it in a brick and mortar building has limited our audience. And so even people like myself can really get in touch with the culture that I grew up in and learn interesting things about Australian history. So next slide. So this idea of digital skills, I just want to sort of go, you know, deeper on that. And so we've seen Microsoft has recognized with COVID that, you know, with any major change in any country or in the world, we see pivotal change happening, and the roles of yesterday, the workforce roles. Firstly, we've got massive unemployment globally, and people need to retrain. And so Microsoft has invested significantly in that and in facilitating that through libraries as well as through other channels, including places like LinkedIn Learning and things like that. But we're very, very dedicated to this idea of skills and how can we help them. And these are not just skills in technologies or how to code, but this is just like life skills. How can I navigate the world? How can I apply for unemployment? How can I apply for any of these kinds of things? And as well as just digital skills, like, you know, how do I do, and digital skills does not have to mean coding, right? We do tend with technology to think that it's coding is everything there is. And if you're not a coder, you don't need to understand technology. But we have a very large proportion of the population who are uncomfortable. And we tend to stereotype on generational lines of seniors have it challenging, but young people are fine. And that's not necessarily true, as we know. So it's like, how can we make this available in the absence of others? And then, of course, just developing new skills for workforce. And we're seeing an increasing trend and conversation happening in education around micro-credentialing and this idea of continuous learning throughout your life and throughout your career, and no longer the idea of, it's certainly from the days when I was at school, which is, you know, you go to high school and then you go to a trade, or you go to university and then you're done. And so even at my late stage of life, I maybe not that late, but anyway, stage of life, you know, recently did a master's degree. And but this idea of having to, you know, continuously keep our skills going. And I'm also at Microsoft, we are encouraged to keep our own technical skills up to date. And so I'm always going through that. But this is something that now needs to be available to everybody, not just the privileged. And so we're very excited to be partnering with CCI Learning. We're very committed to this, and very interested in how we can help support digital literacy throughout the world. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all. I'm going to stay on and listen because I'm really interested, and I'll take any questions at whatever point we do questions in this. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Catherine. That was very interesting, and it would be great if you could stay on to the end if you're able to, in case anyone has any questions for Catherine at the end.